Snow White is not beloved for being a strong character. Instead, she's most definitely a damsel in distress. What if Disney had gone a different direction and made Snow White a strong female character? Well, hello there. My name's Jeremy, and welcome back to Freeform Disney, where I talk about all aspects of Disney, from the animated movies, to the theme parks, to Star Wars, Marvel, and Pixar, to the TV shows, and everything in between. That's why it's Freeform. And keep coming back every day for new daily content. If you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to hit that subscribe button right now. Now, on to today's topic. What if Snow White were a strong female character? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs was Disney's first animated feature, and it performed spectacularly. But that wasn't because Snow White was a bold, daring character. In fact, I think Snow White was probably the least interesting character in that movie. Okay, fine, that title probably goes to Prince Charming, but he's so dreamy. There were certainly stronger female characters than Snow White in that time period. Two that come to mind right off the bat are Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, which came out just 2 years later. Or for a much stronger character, how about Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind? Given those characters, did Snow White really have to be the bland, meek, submissive damsel in distress that we got? Probably not. But let's go further and make her into a quote-unquote strong female character. Would the movie have been successful with Snow White as a strong female character? I'll make my bets that might have been a bridge too far. But let's go there anyway. And today, I'm going to go ahead and be joined by my co-writer for The What If, and my wife Natalia, who will also be doing the voice for Snow White. The movie starts as normal, although the wishing well scene would certainly go differently. But eventually we come to the scene where Snow White and the Huntsman are walking through the woods. She knows that her stepmother has been up to something. She has noticed the Huntsman's uneasiness on the walk, and she's started to figure out what the Huntsman is up to. Her heart turns heavy as his steps approach her. She has known him practically her whole life. Preparing herself, she turns slowly to the Huntsman, her deep brown eyes staring directly at his nervous olive ones.
Do you really intend to go through with it?
The Huntsman takes a step back, startled and caught completely off guard, quickly hiding his knife behind his back now that the princess's eyes are on him. To go through with what? His stammering and demeanor confirms what Snow White suspected. Sorrow and hurt swell in her heart, but she pushes it aside. She knows her stepmother and how persuasive she could be. If she was going to survive this, she had to play her cards just right. Staring him dead in the eyes, she holds his gaze captive.
My stepmother ordered you to kill me, didn't she?
The Huntsman is floored by her bluntness. Yet, a part of him should have expected it. He had looked out for her as a child, as her father, the late king, had trusted him with her care when she wandered the nearby woods. At a young age, Snow White had insisted that he teach her how to use a bow, and although reluctant at first, he taught her and found her to be a quick study. As she grew, he learned how sharp her wit and instincts were, and he was proud she had become such a skilled archer under his teachings. Deciding to follow his queen's orders to kill such a treasure had taken everything in him. And now, staring at those steady brown eyes full of sorrow and betrayal, he was reminded of that determined, strong, yet kind girl he watched slowly become a young woman. He wanted to search for an excuse, to say it was not true. Guilt weighed heavy in his heart, and the lies completely failed him under the gaze of those brown eyes. Yes, it's true. Her body language did not betray how those words cut her, how much it hurt that her mentor and friend might have actually gone through with it. She was sure his life was on the line should he fail, and fear of death can be an incredible motivator. But she also knew him, and she had to use that to her advantage. She addressed him with the most authoritative voice she could muster, for maybe, just maybe, her authority and friendship could cut through the control that her wicked stepmother had over him. She had to reach his heart.
Lower your knife, John. You are a kind and good-hearted man. You are my friend and mentor. You are not a murderer.
The huntsman's knife begins to shake, warring with himself. His life, the life of his family, was on the line. But the young princess stood before him. Anyone else would be screaming bloody murder, running away, or frozen in fear. But not Snow White. She was strong and proud. It broke him. He fell to his knees, the knife falling to the ground, silenced by the grass. Unable to keep his eyes on hers, his gaze fell to the ground, shame filling his heart. Your Highness, I never wanted to. Snow White smiled sadly, watching her old friend in such distress.
I know, John.
Then she lowered her voice knowingly.
She threatened your family, didn't she?
The huntsman slowly nods his head. Yes, I can't let any harm come to them. Snow White felt rage boil within her, yet she remained calm. She knew the huntsman's family, and she couldn't bear the thought of them being harmed.
You have my word, John. As your friend and princess, I would not let any harm come to your family.
Her mind raced. There must be something she could do. But what? Suddenly the idea came to her.
My stepmother. She asked for proof.
The huntsman swallowed uneasily. Yes, your highness. He hesitated to even say it out loud. She asked for your heart. To his shock, Snow White grinned mischievously.
If it is a heart she wants, it is a heart she will get.
Our scene ends here. Unlike the other Snow White, this Snow White knows her people and cares deeply for her kingdom. She also is not clueless about what the evil queen is up to. Therefore, she is able to thwart her stepmother's plot on her life. She comes up with the plan for the huntsman to give her stepmother a wild boar's heart. But she nonetheless must still go into hiding. Later, we jump forward to Snow White meeting the 7 dwarfs. The dwarfs, as before, accidentally wake Snow White. She apologizes to them.
Please forgive my intrusion. I was in need of a place to stay for the night, and I found your cottage in my hour of need.
Doc, ever the first to offer a helping hand to those in need, quickly spoke up. That's problem not. That's not a problem. Even way out here, us princess has heard of beautiful and kind dwarfs. Us dwarfs have heard of the beautiful and kind princess. The other dwarfs nod eagerly, excited to have such an honored guest in their home. Well, all except for one, whose skeptical gaze watched Snow White with distrustful eyes. What he means, Miss Snow White, is that we know that you're putting us all in danger. So how kind are you really? Doc clasped his hands in excitement. Yes! Wait, no. Doc looks at Grumpy worriedly, then puffs up his chest valiantly, his protective nature taking over. You're welcome to stay with us. Snow White smiles as she sees 6 of the 7 dwarfs nod invitingly. She is relieved and appreciative that a majority of the group are willing to give her much-needed shelter.
You're too kind. How may I repay you?
Before any of the 6 dwarves could dismiss such an offer, Grumpy chimed in and, in a grave tone, said, "The evil witch, the queen no less, will be coming after you out here. How do you, a mere princess with no power, propose we stop her? She knew he had a point. Her stepmother's power reached far, even out here. She would be able to hide from her for now, but not forever. And these 7 dwarves would be taking a huge risk by giving her shelter from such a madwoman. She needed time to figure out how to stop her stepmother once and for all, to free her kingdom from her tyranny. But first she needed a place to stay which was safe. An idea came into her mind. She looked at the one named Grumpy, nodding toward the tools against the wall.
I noticed your pickaxes. I know she hurts your business out here, and that dwarfs have fled the kingdom because of the hatred.
She looked straight into his eyes with intense determination.
If I take back my kingdom, I can promise you I will treat you fairly. I know you all will be taking a great risk by keeping me here, but once I am on the throne, you will be rewarded handsomely.
If you survive until then, Grumpy whispered disbelievingly. Ignoring his comment, she continued.
In the meantime, I'm willing to work in the mines with you to help earn the money to take back my kingdom.
Grumpy's voice was incredulous. You, a woman in the mines? Ha! She stood her ground and looked at him with determination.
You think I can't pull my weight?
His gaze was disdainful. I know you can't pull your weight. No human man, much less a woman, can work the mines like a dwarf can. Snow White knew this might be her only opportunity to take down the powerful queen, her wicked stepmother. She was certainly not going to back down and just hide with her tail between her legs. She was going to actively shape her destiny. She looked him dead in the eyes, gaze firm and strong.
I'll take that wager.
Grumpy was taken aback by her determination, his mouth going slack with shock as the other dwarfs exclaimed in surprise as well. Taking this opportunity, Snow White continued.
If I can dig more gems in a day than you, then you must support my fight against the queen.
They both stared intently into each other's eyes, each determined to silently dominate the other. The room was an uneasy silence, as the other dwarfs dared not make a sound and barely even breathe. When Snow White showed no signs of cowing to his gaze, Grumpy spoke with a stern, yet soft voice. And if you lose? Snow White replies, voice just as stern and soft.
If I lose, then I will leave and be on my way.
Grumpy shakes his head. This must be some kind of woman trickery. The other dwarfs look at each other and worry, and knowing that if Grumpy could not be convinced, then the poor princess would be left to fend for herself while the evil witch tried to kill her. They wouldn't have it. They knew this was her only shot. Happy spoke up first. Oh, come now, Grumpy. Surely you can pull your weight in the mine against little Snow White. The other dwarfs quickly chime in. Dopey even pulls at Grumpy's sleeve and mimes digging with a pickaxe. Grumpy grits his teeth but relents. Fine. If it will make the rest of you all be quiet, I'll take on the woman's wager. Snow White smiles. We move on to our next scene, as the movie now has a scene with the other dwarfs giving advice to Snow White on how best to mine gems. Dopey especially wants to help the beautiful princess. Think of a training montage, probably with a musical number. The day of the competition arrives, and Snow White and the dwarfs head to the mine. It's time for the big competition between Grumpy and Snow White. And Grumpy certainly isn't going to take it easy on her. They start at the break of dawn, just as the dwarfs do each day. The beginning of a long, grueling, 14-hour day. Snow White gets off to a good enough start, going strong for the first couple hours and keeping pace with Grumpy. After the second hour, she even starts to gain a lead on him as she starts to get the hang of it. Her size gives her a bit of a benefit here. She's really starting to think this will go great for her. But Grumpy doesn't seem to be worried. Snow White wipes the sweat from her brow, looking at Grumpy questioningly.
I'm ahead of you already. How are you not worried?
He snorts dismissively. You've never worked a day in a mine, have you? Talk to me in another few hours and you'll be begging to quit. He says nothing else and goes back to mining. She takes a deep breath, slight worry beginning to form, but she casts it aside. She is ahead, and she is going to keep that lead. Or so she thought. But there was a grave problem with Snow White's approach. One which those who work long hours in physically hard labor can attest to. Working a day in the mine was a marathon, not a sprint. By the time the fourth hour was finishing, she was exhausted. She was not used to using her muscles like this. She was covered in sweat and had already gained new scrapes and bruises. But she still held her lead for now. By the time the day was halfway through and it was time for lunch, Snow White had lost her lead. Grumpy was ahead. One of the dwarfs rang the bell, signaling the midday meal. She straightened after 7 long hours, raising the heavy pickaxe, chipping away at hard rock, hauling the rock and gems to the carts and out of the mines. It was hard work. 7 hours of back-breaking work with no rest. She had looked at the other dwarfs with envy when they went and took small rest breaks. But she couldn't rest because too much was at stake. Snow White wanted to collapse. Every muscle in her body ached as if she had been beaten with a club. Every breath was a struggle. Her body was drenched in her own sweat, and she was covered head to toe in dust and dirt. But she knew she needed to win. She told herself she just needed to eat, and she would be energized enough to continue this fight. There was just too much at stake. Her kingdom needed to be rid of the tyrant queen. She just had to win. She sat down heavily next to the dwarfs, every bone in her body protesting at the slightest movement. But she did not complain. She just ate her meal. Then back into the mine they went. Snow White felt a bit of renewed energy. She kept mining. Her hopes went up, and she started working with renewed vigor. She could do this. She looked to her left, and her heart plummeted. Grumpy's lead was growing, not diminishing. There was no way she would be able to beat him. Grumpy caught her gaze and smirked.
See? What did I tell you?
She took a deep breath, but held her head up high, looking straight into his eyes with determination.
You might win, but I will not give up.
He broke the gaze, not saying a word. Snow White struggled to keep going. Another hour passed, and another. There was no chance of her overtaking Grumpy now. Doubt and despair started to settle in. What was the point, she asked herself. Everything hurt desperately. But she couldn't give up. Her people needed her. She couldn't just leave them under her stepmother's tyrannical rule. So another hour passed, and another. Even as every muscle in her body screamed at her to stop. As every swing of the pickaxe was agony, she kept going and going and going. Pure will and grit holding her up. And eventually, sunset arrived. The shift was over. At the chime of the bell, Snow White collapsed. The other dwarves helped her back to her feet and out of the mine. Grumpy stood there with arms crossed, next to a giant pile more than twice as large as her own. She saw the sadness on the other dwarfs' faces. They had hoped for her to win, especially Dopey. And she knew what was coming next. She had lost. She had given everything, and still lost. The bitter taste of defeat was strong, and it almost gagged her. She was going to have to leave and hope to find some other safe haven. Her face fell. Unable to look up, she had failed her people.
Well, are you coming or not? I hope you don't expect us to carry you back to the cottage.
Hearing Grumpy's words snapped her out of her despair, and her confused gaze rose to meet Grumpy's.
What?
Grumpy shook his head. Get up and start walking. Lean on Doc if you need to. No point in dilly-dallying longer than we need to.
Snow White was very confused at this point.
But I lost.
Woman, there is no way someone who has not worked the mines would come close to beating me. But you,
he looked her square in the eye.
You have something I have never seen in anyone else. I have never seen anyone, no woman, no dwarf, no one, try as hard as you did. You knew you had lost, and still kept going, to the point that we had to drag you out of that mine. You have true inner strength. Who am I to tell you to go away?
Her heart swelled with joy.
Oh, Grumpy.
He waved her off. Now don't get all mushy on me and make me regret it.
The other dwarfs realized what had happened and came rushing over, their faces filled with joy. For a moment, it was almost hard to tell which one was happy because they were all so joyous. During the months that followed, Snow White put in hard work in the mine, earning money that would help her take back her kingdom. She and the dwarfs got along great. Even Grumpy started to consider her family. She also met with the prince, who was smitten with her and worked to forge an alliance with his kingdom and earn their support for her cause. Months later, we would come to the evil queen, disguised as a hag, bringing a poison apple to the cottage to kill Snow White. To be continued. What happens next? Did you like this take on Snow White? And do you want to see a conclusion to this story? Let me know down below in the comments what your thoughts are for a part 2. If I see lots of people really wanting one, then we'll definitely go ahead and make it. Thanks for watching. Please give it a like and share it with anyone else you think might like it. Snow White Week will be continuing tomorrow with some Disneyland history on the ride Snow White's Scary Adventures. Click that subscribe button and ring the bell so YouTube will let you know when I drop new videos. Until then, have a magical day, and may the Force be with you always.